Hello friends and potential friends. This time of year my garden changes pretty rapidly. We're into our roller coaster season. Temperatures go up, temperatures come down, temperatures go up. Plants don't know what to do, the people don't know what to do. I can't decide whether to turn the heater on or turn the air conditioner on. But because the changes happen so fast, I'll be doing a lot more frequent garden update for a while. I went out Saturday to do an update and turned out to be one of the windiest days of the year. So when I reviewed that video, it had so much wind noise in it, it was unusable. Now I could have just recorded a voiceover and tacked on the audio tracks to the video, but I decided to try something a little bit different. So we'll watch the video together in a few minutes. Before we get to that, let me show you what I mean by roller coaster. Some of you may know that I put up a weather station in the garden about a year and a half ago, and I've been recording the highs and lows and various stats that come off of that station every day. And this is my recordings. This column over here is the high temperatures for each day. Anything in bold is a temperature above 80. Anything in red or bold, or red and bold, is a temperature either above 80 or above 90, or below 60. There's my low temperatures. As you can see, we've had a lot of temperatures below 60 overnights, but I sleep through that and I don't have to worry about it. But here in the first part of February, we started hitting 80s pretty regular. It warm up into the 80s, and then it'll cool off for a few days, then it'll warm up again, and then cool off again. That one in particular, February 18th, I recorded 89.1 in my backyard. Now, to put that in perspective, somewhere right in that week was when that second polar vortex came down and froze most of the country. In fact, it was frozen just an hour north of me. But that front didn't come down into Florida, down onto the peninsula. Here in Central Florida at that time, we were setting record high temperatures. I think it hit 90 degrees twice in Orlando that day. Luckily, I'm over by the ocean where it stays a little bit cooler, but it was still pretty warm. And then it'd cool off again, and then it would heat up again, and it would cool off again, and heat up again, and had a real anomaly here. Our high temperature was 56. Now, for people that were raised in Florida, that's cold. The rest of you are probably laughing at me. But just a few days later, I got my first 90. And 2 days later from that, I had another 90. Came real close to turning the air conditioner on for that one. And then we had another front come through, cool things back down into the 60s and 70s for highs. And the weather guessers are saying that we'll probably be back in the high 80s or low 90s in another week or so. We shall see. That's, incidentally, is probably the last cool down that we'll see for the year. We'll be heading into summer in the next couple of weeks. And as a result of that, the garden goes through a lot of transitions too. So let me put this up and start it playing, and we'll see what the garden's looking like. One thing you may notice right off the bat is there's not as many tomatoes back there as there used to be. And I see an empty spot in that center bed too. All of the mustard is going to seed. Tomatoes are dying off. I do have a bag of tomatoes, well, half a bag of tomatoes in the freezer. And pretty soon I'm going to have a lot of mustard seed. Probably a lifetime supply. Actually, I've already probably got a lifetime supply in my seed stash. But they're all going to seed now, and I'll be getting a lot more seeds out of them. So if anybody needs any mustard seeds, just let me know. The collards are still growing good. Kale is still growing good. I went through the other day and picked a bunch of Swiss chard. So I've got a big freezer bag full of Swiss chard in the freezer. I harvested the last 4 cabbage. Last 4 cabbage heads that I grew this year. Now the tomatoes, the boxcar willies, they pretty much gave it up. I'm still getting cherry tomatoes, and these ones down at the end are mule team, and they're still putting on flowers and growing more tomatoes for me. Now, to be fair, the cherries and the mule teams are down near the far end of the bed where they get a lot more shade every day. The close end of the bed where the boxcar willies were at, that gets about 6 or 7 hours of sunlight every day, and a rather large amount of ultraviolet as well. I'm starting to think the ultraviolet is what really does in a lot of the plants. You can see the Swiss chards looking a little bit bare, and that's because I went through and picked a bunch of it the other day. And there's the empty spot where the cabbage heads were at. And my cilantro is going to seed, so pretty soon it'll be turning into coriander. Now, the 4 tomatoes that I kept in the lab over the winter are over in this section. They get about 4, maybe 5 hours of sunlight a day, and they're still producing a lot of tomatoes. I've had quite a few tomato sandwiches. In fact, I had one for lunch today. But they're still growing good. They're starting to suffer a little bit because of the hot days we've had, the high UV, but I'm still picking tomatoes off of them, and I'll keep on as long as they give them to me. Back in the mini orchard, papaya is growing real good. Still don't know signs of any fruit on it. The sugar cane, if I don't do something about that pretty soon, I'm going to lose it. I need to cut off what's left back there and replant that to get some more of it growing. And back in one shady corner, I found a few loquats that are ripening up. Now, I've been racing with the squirrels trying to get as many of those loquats as I can before they get them, because they're pigs. They come in and take a bite off of one, and they move on to another one. But I get a few every day. Yep, there's one the squirrels got to. Florida avocado is growing real good. It seems to be pretty happy with where I put it. You can see the gardenia up back in the background there as well. And I think the next shot is the loquat that I grew from seed. Right now it's mostly in the shade, but it gets a few hours of sunlight every day. It's about almost 6 feet tall, by the way. And my pride and joy, the Ponderosa lemon. I'll be picking that lemon real soon. It's not as big as they usually get, but it's still a nice sized lemon. And there are still a number of blossoms on the tree. And boy, they smell good. I wish we had smell-o-vision. And a number of them have gone from being blossoms to being teeny tiny little lemons. There you might be able to see that one tiny thing, about the size of a pea right now. We'll just have to see if it hangs on and turns into a lemon. But there are a number of those on that tree. Yep, that's my Ponderosa lemon. Over in my experimental bed, these are the 6 datel peppers that I grew in the green stalk all winter. They produced all winter. After I planted them in here, they just kept on blooming, kept on putting out peppers. There's another aloe stalk in the background, and the other datels that I planted out here a month or 2 ago. And that guy, I don't know the name of that cactus, but sweet potato slips. Sweet potato slips are going crazy. In fact, some of them are starting to turn into runners. I'm going to have to start planting them in the tomato bed before long, but luckily the tomatoes are dying off. Pineapple plantation's still doing good. My Mexican avocado's still doing good. And it looks like I'm going to have another pineapple this year. As a matter of fact, looks like I'm going to have 2 of them. I did get one last year. Looks like I'm going to get 2 this year. And that means I'll have 2 more pineapple plants to add to the plantation. My mulberry twig. This poor thing is in a 12-inch pot. It's about 4 feet across, and it's got mulberries all over it. And I have been getting a few ripe mulberries from time to time. In fact, there's one right there. And even though they're kind of tiny, they sure are sweet. Now, out front, the tomato tower. If the vegetation is any sign of what's going on out underneath, I'm going to be happy. Have you ever seen a potato flower? These things are forming flowers all over them. I wonder if I can get some seeds out of them. Oh, that one pocket that didn't grow with the rest of them is finally starting to put out a potato. So we'll see what happens there. And I may very well try to collect some seeds off of these for a future experiment. I suspect that'll probably be a multi-year experiment, because I've never heard of anybody growing potatoes from seed. I do have some Advarsky peppers at the top level of this green stalk. Hope to get some seeds from them as well. And over in the other green stalk, the mint at the bottom is still fighting it out with the morning glories. The radishes are growing pretty good. I have gotten a couple of small radishes out of there when I was thinning them out. And I have some homestead tomatoes at the top tier that I plan on getting some seeds from at some point. As they grow, I may have to rearrange this and move them farther down in the stack just so they have a way that I can support them. For now, the radishes are doing pretty good. Inside the lab, we've got a variety of tomatoes that I got from UT and Angel. In the background are some corbaci peppers, and I've got a bunch of other peppers. And that one big, happy, healthy thing is a California Wonder bell pepper. It got real happy when I moved it into a larger pot, and it's time to go into an even larger pot now. A few sunflowers in there, a lot of different varieties of peppers, most of which need to be up potted, but I haven't had the space to do it yet, so it hasn't gotten done. And now I need to go out and harvest some more collards. The collards this year, I don't normally grow this many collards, but this was kind of an experiment for me this year. I planted 2 patches of cabbage collards, one at this near end of the bed and one at the very far end of the bed. The ones at the near end get 6 to 7 hours of sunlight every day. The ones at the far end get about 4 to 5 hours of sunlight every day. Now, so far the results are the ones that get more shade haven't been growing quite as fast as the ones up here in the sun, but they are still growing pretty good and producing a lot of leaves. In the middle there are Vates collards. I planted them just because I had the seeds, and they also have been growing real good. They probably get about 4 hours of sun, maybe 5. But to be honest, I really like the cabbage collards better than the Vates collards. The Vates are just not quite as sweet and a little bit more tough, I think. But I've been eating a lot of the collards fresh, as you've seen from my old videos or recent videos. I've got a bunch of them canned in the pantry, and I'm still picking them. I might be turning some of them into sauerkraut here before too long. Ooh, there's another wind gust. But that experiment, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm still waiting to see what those Vates collards do. When I grew cabbage collards last year, I planted them in 2019. I planted them in September, and then in September of 2020, when I was ready to put this garden in, I had to pull them up to plant more, and they just kept on producing all year. Gave me a bunch of collards. I didn't have nearly as many that year as I do this year, but I still had plenty of them to eat fresh, and they never got bitter. They never went to seed, so I just kept on eating them. This year I planted a lot more for the experiment. Well, that's going to be my excuse. I think right now I've got 40 pints in the pantry. I've got a bunch more still growing. I've eaten a lot of them fresh. It's not uncommon to grab a leaf here and there when I'm out in the garden. And there's my latest mess of collards. And that turned into 2 big freezer bags. So I'm starting to fill up the freezer again. And that being that, I hope you enjoyed the little narration. I hope this works out well. Let me know what you think about this format. If enough people like it, maybe I'll try it again from time to time. Though I'll probably stick with all my usual things until the wind kicks up. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you on the next video.